Before we get into today's video, make sure you like and subscribe to the channel for more RPG talk, discussion, let's play gaming, everything you need. Also, don't mind the laundry in the background. It's gonna get done. All right, just don't mind that so much. Yeah, you'll be seeing some dirty laundry in there. So, anyways, let's get into it. In today's video, I want to have a discussion. This is not a hate video, more of just me giving my thoughts on what went wrong with Final Fantasy XIII and how they could have fixed it. Also, I'll be going over very briefly about the problems with 15 and 16. I did cover 16's problems in my last video when I reacted to the video of the Yoshi P problem. In 15, it was already partially fixed with some of the DLC and stuff like that. So it's only going to be brief. I did want to do a series on JRPGs, my discussions with them, how I feel about them, reviews, things like that. So this is going to be kind of my first foray into it. So yeah. Also warning, there will be spoilers. There will be spoilers, so if you're intending on playing any of these games, I would click off now. With all that out of the way, let's get into it. So Final Fantasy XIII was released on March 9th of 2010 on the Xbox 360 and the PlayStation 3. Players such as myself could not wait to get their hands on it and experience what new adventures we would go on. Upon release, there was a lot of criticism about how linear the areas were, how awful some of the characters were written, and how poorly paced and convoluted the story was. Personally, I think the problem wasn't so much the areas were linear as I do the other 2 points, the story and characters. The reason I say that is because Final Fantasy X is super linear when it comes to the areas. But the story was so well written and the characters were so well liked that it wasn't a big deal. I do understand coming from Final Fantasy XII where the world was more open. It wasn't a totally open world, but it was more open. To coming to 13 and it not being so open at all. Yeah. But I'm not gonna go through the entire story of Final Fantasy XIII as it doesn't really need to be told because the problems exist not really with the story itself, but more of how it was told. For me, the issue was noticeable in the very beginning. This is where, no pun intended, the stories went off the rails. But before we get into what that problem was, I do need to go over the actual world itself, some of the characters, and, well, what the premise is. So, we get thrown into a world of Grand Pulse and Cocoon, a massive sphere that floats above Pulse's surface. So there's 2 worlds. There's Pulse, this is the main world, and a artificial sphere that hangs over Pulse, which is called Cocoon. And Cocoon is where the majority of humanity lives. Pulse is kind of seen as this wild, insane world where, it's just not considered good. And if you are from there, then you're like an animal. It's just, yeah, there's a lot of discrimination going on there. The gods, so there's gods in this universe, and the gods are called Fal'Cie. They're on Pulse and they're on Cocoon. Their whole purpose is to power Cocoon, give lighting, water, all that other happy horse shit. The gods have the ability to mark people with a symbol, turning them into servants called l'Cie. So the gods are called Fal'Cie, their servants are called l'Cie. The servants are given a task to fulfill, or else they turn into monsters. If they fulfill the task, they become crystallized until a new task is given. As I said, the people of Cocoon are terrified of anything from Pulse, especially the Fal'Cie. Anyone who would come in contact with a person or being from them would swiftly be exiled. Now, we're already off to somewhat of a convoluted start here. There's a lot of information that is being thrown at you, but basically what it boils down to is gods give power to people. People have to fulfill a task by gods, or else they turn into monsters, or they fulfill it and get crystallized. That's really what it comes down to. So with the world out of the way, let's get into the actual story itself. Our story begins on a train where the citizens of the town of Bodum are being exiled or purged from Cocoon for coming into contact with the fal'Cie from Pulse. We don't know how or why this happened, but it did. We are then introduced to two of our main protagonists, Lightning and Saz. Now, I will say those two are probably my favorite characters in the whole story. Lightning is just super cool, and Saz is also just super cool. I really can't say more about them. They're just awesome characters. They derail the train that is exiling the people in order to save Lightning's sister Sarah and Saz's son, both whom came into contact with the fal'Cie. Now, this is where the problem begins. And it's one of those things where, for me, it's okay to start things with a bang, but how they get into how it happened, this is where the problem starts. This is where it begins. Now, after the train gets derailed, we're now introduced to a few more characters. 3 more to be exact. Snow, who is the fiance of Sarah, Lightning's sister. Hope, who I'll talk about more in a second. And Vanille, who is pretty much a sweetheart. You love her. Yeah, we learned a little bit about her and how she ties into all this much later on in the story. But for now, let's talk about Snow and Hope. And this is problem number 2. These two characters are both stupid. Both of them. So Snow is just kind of like a meathead. He's just dumb. He is leading a revolution against the frickin' government of Cocoon, and he's like, the train gets derailed, and so Hope and his mom are there, and Snow is like, hey, why don't you take up a gun and join us, to Hope? And Hope's like, no, I don't want to do that. And then Hope's mom's like, I'll do it. So she does, and she dies. Yep, she dies by the army of Cocoon. They kill her, or she falls to her death, or whatever it was. Hope then gets mad at Snow and blames him for the death of his mom and vows revenge against Snow. Oh, okay. Oh, okay. Well, that's okay. So, both of them are dumb, as I said. Both of them. So what ends up happening is they find Sarah. So, again, we're already off to a rough start with why are we here? What is happening? And two characters that you're just like, ugh, God. So they end up going to find Sarah. They meet up with Lightning and Saz. They find her, and she's with the fal'Cie, and she fills her task of bringing them all together and creating new servants. And Sarah gets crystallized, and now your cast is l'Cie, and Hope still hates Snow, and Snow's just like, I want to save you, Sarah. And Lightning hates Snow because she thinks he's stupid, which he is. Very frustrating. It was very frustrating. So they all start splitting off. Snow falls, and then he gets his summon, which I actually kind of like the summons in the system. I'm a big fan of Transformers, so I thought it was pretty cool. And Hope, Vanille, and Saz, go off with Lightning, and Hope's talking to Lightning like, "Hey, I want you to train me," and Lightning's like, "No," and you're too dumb, and Hope's like, "No, I will," and then Hope kind of runs off on his own like a dum dum, and then he's about to be attacked, and so obviously he's crying like a little girl, and so then Lightning saves him, and it's like, "Fine, I'll train you." And Hope keeps falling on his face, and she's like, "Why are you doing this?" And he's like, "Oh, I want to kill Snow," and it's just so stupid. It's so stupid. Okay, okay, that's enough of me, myself whining about this. So that is your beginning of your story. That is it. Why is this all happening? What is going on? And what could have been done differently? Now, this is where I want to get into. This is the problem. The rest of this, I'm not going to really discuss. I'm not going to discuss the rest of the story. It's not entirely necessary. If they fixed the beginning of this, then the rest of this would have been fine. So we have chapters now in between each section. Okay, so we'll go into that. And then in between each chapter, they give you the 13 days leading up to the purge or the exile. So you're getting small snippets here and there of everything that's happening. And that's problematic because it would have been good to have that in the very beginning to introduce the characters, give you a reason to care for the characters, give you a reason for why you want to keep doing this story. The train scene should have happened about probably maybe the 2 to 3 hour mark. It shouldn't have happened at minute 1. Had they had the first scene with Snow and Sarah telling Lightning that they're engaged, you would have probably cared more about Snow. You get to see the relationship with Sarah and Snow from the very beginning, making Snow kind of like, no, still dumb, but like a little bit more like kind of, what's the word, adorkable. Like he's a dork, but he's like, you're just like, he's so sweet and whatever. Instead of just him being stupid from the very beginning and you just not caring, you could have introduced Hope throughout this. You had Lightning kind of going around, maybe killing some monsters or something like that. He gets introduced to Hope and his Hope's mom, and you learn about Hope's relationship with his parents, because that is actually a pretty important part of Hope and his character is his relationship with his parents. Again, giving you more reason to care about the characters themselves. They didn't do that. They did it later in between chapters. And by that point, you already don't care. You're already like, whatever. I don't care about these two characters. The story can be convoluted. Shit, 7 story is kind of convoluted. 8 story is 100% convoluted. 10, you got to pay attention because there's a lot of shit going on there too. It's just a lot. Like not many stories are super straightforward. Like 12 has got a relatively straightforward story, and I actually really enjoy 12. Or 16's got a pretty solid narrative that's just straight on, even though, as I said, I'm going to briefly touch on this. 16's problem was its pacing issue. Same thing with 15. And I'm going to touch on that right now too, real quick. Just real quick. They should have never gated story behind a fucking movie in an anime in DLC. Never should have done that. Now they fixed the DLC part of it with Final Fantasy 15 Royale. Great. But the movie part and the fucking anime part, yeah, that's bullshit. It's bullshit. Should have just been in the game. Game would have been better. I digress. Back to 13. So now you understand the problem. And yeah. I don't understand why they did it. I think they wanted to tell a story in a different way than how they normally would. I think it's a fine idea to start the story off with a bang, kind of like how 10 did. 10, you're literally playing as Tidus. He's he's playing Blitzball, and Sin comes in attack, and he gets sucked up by Sin. He's got to fight his way all the way over there, and him and Orin just get sucked in, and now he's in a new world, and he's kind of going, well, what's going on? But it feels like you're starting from the beginning. You actually feel like you're starting from the beginning of a journey, not 3, 4 hours into a journey. And that was the problem with 13. I wish they could go back and fix that. I don't know who made that decision, that choice. But the reality is, you didn't necessarily need to fix the characters themselves. You just need to add more depth from the beginning. You didn't need to fix the story itself. You just need to add those points, those in between, those 13 days, into the beginning of it. You didn't need to show every single day in the 13. You only need to show a few of them, the major plot points, the major beats. You get introduced to Saz and Lightning, and as they meet each other for the first time, Sarah, you give a reason to care about her. You give a reason to care about Snow and Hope. Get kind of glimpses into Vanille. I don't think Vanille should have been introduced that early. It's just something you could see her feet or something like they kind of sort of did in those in betweens where they showed Vanille and Fang, who are, spoiler alert again, they're from Pulse. They're actually, let's see, from Pulse, who were sent to Cocoon. They had their own mission, so on and so forth. But they didn't do any of that. They paced it again so poorly. And this was the problem with, again, 13, 15, and 16. The pacing of those games isn't great. It's just not. This has been a problem, I feel like, with Final Fantasy for quite some time now. I think 7 Rebirth and I think Remake are very well done, but those are games that they're remakes, so it's easier for them to pace that out because they already have the story written. They just need to add the stuff to it. Rebirth, being probably my game of last year, had a wonderful way of telling their story. They gave character development not just in the main story, but in side quests. And I'm kind of hoping that 17 will do the same thing. I'm hoping Square takes what they learned from 13, 15, and 16, and then what they learned from Rebirth, and how much people loved those, loved Rebirth and Remake, and put that into 17. But 13, like I said, how they could have fixed it, they just need to move things around. And that was it. Now, they could have made the zones less linear. Sure, I think that would have been a better idea. And I definitely think that that would have helped people. That would be one thing that, people wouldn't obviously be so upset about. But it doesn't fix the story. It doesn't fix the characters. It only makes part of the progression better. So, anyways, this was not going to be the longest video, and this is my first video really trying to do a discussion. But I hope you guys enjoyed it. I want to hear your thoughts on it because this is just something that's been on my mind for quite some time. So I want to hear your thoughts. So leave a comment below. Let's have a talk. Let's have a discussion about it. And yeah, I will see you all in the next video. So thank you for watching. Bye, everyone.